Hi and welcome. I'm Steve Martireno, and this is the Behavioral Corner. You're invited to hang with us as we discuss the ways we live today, the choices we make, the things we do, and how they affect our health and well-being. So you're on the corner, the Behavioral Corner. Please hang around a while. Hi, everybody. How are you? Welcome again to the Behavioral Corner. It's me hanging on the corner. You know, when we named this the Behavioral Corner, I don't think we were taking video into account. This was supposed to be a sort of audio production so that we could create a conceit that we were hanging on a corner, meeting interesting people. Well, that still holds up to a certain extent because most people listen to this podcast. But if you're watching it, obviously I'm not on a corner. I'm in my office. So I apologize. Anyway, what we're about here on the Behavioral Corner is talking about behavioral health, which is a gigantic topic, covers a lot of ground. So when people ask me what the podcast is about, I say it's about everything. And I think we're going to prove that today because we're going to talk about martial arts. I can't think of anything in the past 30 years, 40 years of my life that hasn't been more consciously aware by the public in general, mostly through movies and television. I mean, there isn't a single action movie I can think of where the actors are not doing some kind of martial arts. So everybody knows what we're generally talking about. But we're going to get into the weeds on martial arts, in particular Jiu-Jitsu, with our guest today, Scott Terrizzi. Scott's a 40-year-old purple belt in Jiu-Jitsu, and he has some I think he has some great insights to tell us. So, what that's about, what's jiu-jitsu as opposed to what's judo, but beyond that, the benefits he has derived from 6 years now of training in the martial art of jiu-jitsu. So, Grasshopper, welcome to the Behavioral Corner. Scott, thanks for doing this. We appreciate it.
You bet, Steve. Thanks a lot for having me. I'm really excited.
Yeah, we are too. This is going to be a lot of fun. So, let's begin with what attracted you to this. How did you come to the decision that this was something you wanted to get better at?
Yeah, so I didn't know. I can't say that I decided and then made it so. It was a little bit different than that. Jiu-Jitsu kind of happened into my life at an interesting time. I was in my mid-30s, early 30s. And having relative success in my career, doing well. And my wife and I, we had kind of gotten to the part where, we wanted to continue to pursue happiness, right? And I'd watched some folks in my life and watched the storyline play out where professional success does not always end up leading folks to happiness, right? And then you continue on that search maybe after you looked for it in professional success. And between that and some thoughts around mortality, right? Like I don't want to have a bucket list full of things to do at the end of my life. I want to start knocking those things off as soon as I possibly can. We had put this plan together that we would start doing one thing every year that we either always wanted to do or were always too scared to do that and wanted to do.
This was you and your wife.
My wife and I, yeah.
Yeah.
And it carried over to our kids. So our kids do it now as well. So we still carry this practice on today. Jiu-Jitsu was something that I always wanted to do, but I was a little bit scared to do. I had tried in my late 20s to go to a gym, and I tried to get a buddy to go with me, and I couldn't get anybody to go with me. They all called me crazy. So it was a journey that I couldn't get anybody to take with me, and I kind of stumbled into it. So when we were looking at ultimate goal in life is to be happy. I decided to start studying happiness, right? And what are the components of happiness? And it's a tricky topic, just much like the opposite of depression, hopefully is happiness. Depression can be defined differently for different people. Happiness is defined differently for different people. What makes us happy and to what level that thing makes us happy can be different from one individual to another. So I started to figure out what is happiness if that's the thing I want to create. And then in those studies, took some courses, read some books, spent a few years on it, and learned that there were different buckets kind of that you could fill in. And some of those things are like meditation, gratitude, savoring, kindness, connection, exercise, sleep, goals. These are all things that if you can focus on those on a daily basis and fill those buckets a little bit, hopefully at the end of it, you'll be a little bit happier. So about that.
That's an interesting path into jiu-jitsu. I mean, I think it is, I think it's it's a very sharp insight, because most people look to the activity and then suddenly discover, oh, well, this has benefit me in this other way. But you did it, I think, the more logical way. Well, I'm trying to be happy. So what are the things that I can wind up doing? So I appreciate that a lot.
Yeah. So that's that. And then an injury from weightlifting had driven me towards a buddy of mine talked me into going to our local gym. Our local 302 was a jiu-jitsu, a Muay Thai, and an MMA gym. So they have all of them. They had a great reputation in the marketplace. And my buddy sent me in there by myself. He did not come with me, and he doesn't train there today. But he sent me in there on good reconnaissance that would be the gym to go to. And from there, I think this is the typical first day for pretty much anybody that tries out jiu-jitsu. You know right away if this is for you or if this is not for you. In the first experience, you'll typically know.
I want you to get specific about that, but I don't want to leave this issue of happiness, because it's well, for you, and in a lot of cases, it's a foundational moment there when you decide, why am I doing this? This is an aside, but it just occurs to me. When Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence, he was very specific about what the colonies were claiming to the king that they were endowed with by the Creator. And he said, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And I don't think enough people look at that and go, what the hell is he talking about? The person, in other words, you know, as you just correctly pointed out, I'm free to seek happiness. And Jefferson was smart enough not to put down what that meant. So it's just a great insight. Okay, so I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to find out about jiu-jitsu. Why do you say that the moment, it doesn't take long before you go, I'm in the wrong place?
Yeah, so I played football in high school and college. I was a weightlifter. I thought I could, handle myself in a physical altercation. It was tested mildly throughout my life, but never really thought much about it, right? So I go into the gym thinking, all right, so I can defend myself, relatively well. And the things that you think about when you think about a fight don't really play out when you're in a jiu-jitsu environment. There's no adrenaline dump. The things that you normally would do to even leave a fight are probably no-nos when you're fighting a jiu-jitsu practitioner, like turning around or giving them your back or anything like that. Like, these are things you don't want to do. But the lack of the adrenaline dump, and I realized right away that there was a systematic dismantling of all of the defenses that I thought I had in any kind of self-defense situation that was happening to me. And I left that day 100% wanting to know how to do that. That was my feeling. I need to learn that.
Yeah, that's very interesting, because it seems, correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't know, that you are typical in that you walked in thinking about this martial art in a combat context, or a physical altercation context. As you said, you've had your share. You've been in bars when things got strange. You know that stuff, but none of it matters in this context. Is that the mistake you made?
Yeah. Well, you go into it. I thought anyway, this is going to be a good workout, and then also that I can kind of defend myself. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in particular is all about submission holds. It's either a strangle or a joint lock where you're simulating breaking somebody's arm or leg, something along those lines. So your first thought is, I'm going to get in a fight, right? So I got to defend myself.
Right.
But it's far more like a chess match. It's like human chess, far more like a chess match than it is a fight. If you don't know jiu-jitsu, the sport, you're not going to know how to defend yourself in that type of an altercation at all.
Well, help us before we get into some of the more, I guess, metaphysical aspects of martial arts and judo. I really want to talk about this training aspect of it. This idea that well, I read over the weekend looking some of this stuff up, that jiu-jitsu is distinguished by, and I love the phrase, the art of yielding. What do they mean when they say that?
Yeah, so in jiu-jitsu, momentum has a lot to do with what you can and cannot do. It's really hard to move a rock or a stump, but when somebody is moving, it's a whole lot easier to manipulate their movements. So understanding space and feeling space and movement is something that you learn over time, or that I've been able to learn over time. And I think it takes a lot of time and practice to learn those things, like actually feeling somebody move into you and be able to use that against them rather than just get pinned to the mat and suffocated, right? So you do learn over time how to yield to somebody else's power or where they're moving, and then ultimately use it to your advantage. And then at some level, you get to figure out how to create that movement, how to make them make the movement that you want them to make, so that you can use it against them.
That's really interesting. So we're perfectly clear, I am anyway, when you see that it has to do with the art of yielding, that's not yielding in a submissive sense. It's yielding so that you can gain an advantage in the moment. Is that right?
Yeah, I would interpret it that way. If you go into any jiu-jitsu gym, I don't think you're gonna see too many people just like staying away or yielding in the submissive sense. They're using that motion against the person that they're training with.
Well, then let's explain this to me, because I don't know. In a combat, I don't know, what do you call the situation? In a match, when you're facing an opponent in jiu-jitsu, they talk about boxing as the sweet science, or it's actually people think boxing is supposed to be all offense, when in fact boxing is about defense. It's about not getting hit. In jiu-jitsu, do you wait for your opponent to move first? How does that, if both guys are schooled in jiu-jitsu, how's it work? Who makes the first move so that the other can then use that momentum against them?
Yeah, when you start out, you're going to probably find yourself making the first move, and it's probably going to be a mistake. As we talk through this, I'll talk about the connections that you make, and that was one part of the happiness, buckets that you want to fill. But the friendships that I've made in that gym are some of the best that I have to date, and the things that I've taken from those guys are infinite. And one of them, since you're asking this question, came early in my training. I was training with a guy named Trevor Green, great guy, and I didn't know any better. I would reach out, grab him, and he armbarred me, which is basically simulating breaking my arm. So as long as I tap in time. So then when you're done, when you tap, you just reset and you start over. So I grab him again the same exact way. He armbars me the same exact way I tap. We start over. I grab him for the third time the same exact way. He armbars me the same exact way. I tap, we start over. I grab him for the fourth time, and he says, listen, you got to let go of that grip. That grip's no good. And in that moment, I realized I was armbarring myself. He was just the one applying it, right? I'm giving him my arm, and he's just applying the breaking maneuver. But that to me was the most enlightening moment that I had up until that point. I actually have a sign over my door in my office that says, you got to let go of that grip. That grip's no good. And it says Trevor Green right under it, because at the time in my life, I was holding on to some things that probably weren't so good for me outside of the gym. And I realized, some things you just have to let go to be able to move on from. So when you first start training, you're going to probably be the first one to make a move. If you're not, know that the person that has been training for a while is probably doing that on purpose, and you're probably still going to lose. But as you start training with folks that know what they're doing, you're both trying to get the other person to make a move that's going to eventually be a mistake.
Wow. Without getting too deep into this, it sounds like most of jiu-jitsu the outcome of most jiu-jitsu matches, it's already it's almost already over before it begins, because if you're very good at it, you know exactly what you're going to do, and it's pretty much over. It's like the guys who look at a chess. You talked about chess earlier. It's like guys who look at a chessboard and can see 6 moves ahead.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting dynamic. Well, what else about your training? What kind of shape? I mean, you probably were fit when you got to the gym, but for people that are just going, well, I'd like to try that. What kind of shape do they have to be in physically before they get started?
So we hear all the time, like, I want to get in shape before I come in. I want to get in shape before I come in and do jujitsu or wrestle. You can't. Um, you can't get yourself into shape for that practice without doing that practice. There's a reason that most fights last, I think, 30 seconds to a minute before somebody gasses out. It's incredibly exhausting. And when you go in and train, this morning we did 45 minutes of straight training. It's 5 minutes per round, and then about 30 seconds off in between rounds. So in that 45 minutes, you're doing as many 5-minute rounds as you can of wrestling. And it's different than anything else that I've experienced, because in any other exercise, I could control the resistance. If I was having a bad day, I put less weight on the bar. If I didn't feel like doing my cardio so much, I'd do 15 minutes on the treadmill and call it a day.
That sounds like my workout earlier today. It's exactly the way I work. Exactly the way I work out.
So the difference in jiu-jitsu is you don't control the resistance. It's the other person that figures that out for you. So it doesn't matter how tired you are. It doesn't matter, whether you feel like going with half of your energy into this next round. They're going to determine the resistance. So
there's no separate protocol that goes on outside of the activity. I mean, there's no, let's warm up here with some jumping jacks, and it's right in the thing, right?
We do some general calisthenics and some warm ups, and we do some drilling movements, like movements that would translate into your jiu-jitsu training. But if in order to come in and train jiu-jitsu, there's nothing you can do other than that to get yourself ready to go in. Don't use that as a reason not to go. Be the short story.
Yeah. The hardest part about working, as you know, the hardest part about gym or exercise is getting there.
Oh yeah,
it's getting to the gym. So how many days a week do you train now?
6.
6 days a week, and each session is how long?
Usually 90 minutes.
All right, and so the matches that you go in that allow you to move up in category, how long are they? Or generally speaking, what's a match look like?
So when we train in the gym, it's just a 5-minute round. 5 or 6 minutes is typical. Sometimes we'll go as many as 9 or 10. We don't do that often. And then sometimes we'll do some shorter rounds where we're just trying to work from a certain position. But a traditional round in our gym is going to be 5 or 6 minutes with 30 seconds in between. So you find yourself a partner. You're going to wrestle them for 5 or 6 minutes. In the 30 seconds in between, find yourself another partner in the room. And then the bell's going to go off and you're wrestling them for the next 5 or 6 minutes. So
how is it scored? Is there a referee, and how is it scored?
No. So that's the other thing about jiu-jitsu and training. Training in the gym, there's no real scoring. There are scoring platforms when you go out and compete against other gyms in competition. But in the classroom, it's really just about learning. So you've got 2 people that are learning this martial art. They're learning together from the instructors that are there, but then also from each other. So you learn a lot in the rounds that you're training with other folks. And to your point earlier, where it says it's kind of predetermined who's going to win the round, there's an anomaly every once in a while, but I will say it's the most honest thing I've ever been around. The person that whatever belt the person is wearing usually represents their abilities pretty well. And then the rest of the honesty comes from whether or not you've been training. If you've been training, you'll feel a whole lot different than if you've been off for a while. Your cardio will fall apart if you've been off for a while. So there's a quote that I heard before that says it'll expose every lie. It'll expose every lie, and it'll confirm every truth once you get on those mats. And it's the truth. It's the most honest thing I've ever been a part of.
That's great. I really do want to talk about that too. So there aren't a lot of disputes over who won that, who wins.
No, I mean, and there's multiple wins that happen in each round, right? So in that 5 minutes, I might get submitted 4 or 5 times. That person beat me 5 times inside of 5 minutes. So there's point type scoring from positions that you can get, but there's also going to be submissions throughout that round as well.
Scott Terrizzi is our guest. He is a purple belt in Jiu-Jitsu, and he's discussing his experience with this martial art and why it's contributed in a number of ways to a better life for him and his family. Where's your wife in all of that? Where does she have a purple belt, or what is?
She does not. She trains very, very little, usually with me or with the kids in the basement. I have some mats here that we train. The kids are training at 302 with me at a kids class. But my wife is incredibly supportive. She loves that I do jujitsu and encourages me to go to jujitsu just because of the effects that it has on me, my mood, how I'm feeling about accomplishing my goals. Everything is tied into that. Not to mention the fact that I wake up every day at 4:30. I go there super early in the morning before anybody else needs anything or wants anything. We accomplish a whole lot by 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, and then come home. So she's a big fan of me having my routine and I guess the result of my mood because of that. So
yeah. How old are the kids?
My son's 11 and my daughter's 8.
What it typically is the earliest you can start children in a martial arts class?
I think they start them about 5 in my gym. I had hoped to start my kid. Well, I had actually started them a couple of years ago before the pandemic started. They had a few months of training under their belts, and then when the pandemic started, as you can imagine, wrestling other folks was probably not something you wanted to do early in the pandemic. So we all got shut down, and I didn't for a while either.
And impossible to do virtually, obviously. Well, Scott, it's obvious that there's a huge, physical benefit in terms of exercise and fitness and all of that. But I think the thing that characterizes martial arts in my mind, and I think in the popular imagination, is since it's an Eastern activity, these are Eastern traditions, there always seems to be a huge component that's spoken of, that's talked about out loud, that has to do with what's going on inside of the jiu-jitsu student or teacher. That certainly exists in all sports. I mean, boxers talk about, getting their head right, and certainly, baseball, football, basketball players talk about getting in that zone. That's all a mental place. But it really seems to be the essence of these Eastern martial arts. So let's explore some of the benefits that I saw that were claimed that come out of the practice of jiu-jitsu and other martial arts. And you tell me what your experience is with them. I have read that, and you've mentioned some of this, that it is a great aid in regulating your emotions. Tell us what that means.
Yeah, so physical exertion, I think in general, can help regulate emotions, just in general. But with jiu-jitsu in particular, for me, because there's such a high level of problem solving associated with the physical exertion, it flattens out my emotions like completely and immediately. And then there's perspective that you get from it, right? So I always say my day, the prospects get a little bit better when somebody's trying to choke you at 6 o'clock in the morning. The problems that arise from the rest of the day, they seem to be a little bit less intense. So. Yeah.
Well, so in a sense, what you're saying is that while martial arts don't eliminate your emotions, you have to regulate them because emotions may not have anything to do with what's going on here, right?
Yeah, and I think that in the way that I train, where I wake up early, I go to the gym before I do anything else. Really, I think that there's a not that it is controlled, because that's probably an illusion, but there's a feeling of controlling my day up until a point where there's not going to be anything else that kind of messes with it. Nobody's really up yet. So nobody asks me for anything. I'm on my way to the gym by 4:45 or 5 o'clock. And I get that part of my day to myself. And I feel like emotionally for me, if I start my day differently, like during the pandemic, I had a harder time coping because I would start my day later, and it would usually be completely thrust into somebody else's agenda because I was starting my day a little bit later and I was going right into work. So now I'm dealing with what other people want to do. So for me, the emotional balance that I get from that illusion of control, I guess, that I give myself in the morning, where I'm at least, I guess with investing, they tell you to pay yourself first, right? I'm paying myself first here.
Yeah,
A little bit of jujitsu.
yeah. That's why I like the mornings too. They don't seem to be used up yet. There seems to be a freshness to it. But so with regard to the pandemic, which disrupted everything, are you able to, I don't practice jujitsu, at home in a solitary way? What did you do to fill that gap?
There are some solo drills that you can do by yourself. I used, right? This is the terms that we use in jujitsu. Let me borrow you, or let me use you for try this move out. But I used my kids. We did some training in the basement. But I taught them also. I taught them some techniques while we were in the pandemic. So being in the house with them, I love the time that I got to spend with them. But with jujitsu being so much more than just physical activity, it wasn't as fulfilling for me to do by myself because the connection piece was gone, the mental challenge was gone, the human chess piece was gone, problem solving was removed. Like a lot of the things that keeps me going in, it was removed from the sport. So then it became a solo thing, and it's not as much fun. Just like anything else, if you really want to lose weight or you want to get in shape, nothing helps more than an accountability group. And trust me, I've got a group of guys that post on Facebook the night before that we're having class, and it's almost a formality at this point. But if you say you're in, you better show up. If you don't, you're going to hear about it. If you decided to sleep in, so that accountability is huge because they count on me and I count on them to be there to train, but then also to do what you say you're going to do.
Yeah. The other thing that I kept popping up is this notion of self-esteem. Now, you seem like by nature you're a pretty confident guy, but we all have doubts. Does this practice of jujitsu enhance your self-esteem? Does it make you feel better about yourself? I mean, the answer seems obvious.
Yeah, I think so. There's a huge element to like keeping your calm under pressure, which I think confidence comes a lot from preparation and being able to stay even keeled when other folks can't. So if you can combine those two, preparation and keeping an even keel, you'll probably feel pretty confident in any situation. This simulation of pressure and keeping your calm under a pressure situation where somebody is simulated fighting you or simulated trying to strangle you or break a limb, requires you to keep your calm, not let your breath get out of control. So between constantly going in and practicing and then putting yourself in bad situations and trying to figure out your way out of it and using that problem solving thing, it definitely can help you with your confidence for sure. And then alleviate anxiety too.
It does relieve anxiety. Is that what you said? Yeah.
Yeah. So Robin Roberts, I think what's her name? She was on one of the morning shows, and she had a bout with cancer a few years ago. And I heard her make a statement about during her treatment, she focused on the present because she found if she thought about the past, she would get depressed, and if she thought about the future, she'd get anxious. But if she was focusing on the present, she was fine. There is, in my experience, no better way to focus on the present than to be attacked by another person and try to stop that. Because
it'll focus your attention, right?
Yeah, you're not going to spend too much time daydreaming in that situation.
Or wondering about the outcome or how it happened. You're just going, yeah, I got it. Got that. Talk about being in the moment, right? That's interesting. I mean, the Robin Williams story is interesting because obviously what could be more traumatic than a cancer diagnosis? But I have also read, and this is particularly in our wheelhouse here on the Behavioral Corner, and that's talking about people who have had serious life trauma and very often medicated themselves to try to alleviate the pain of the trauma by abusing substances. Now, I think you told me in an earlier conversation that it is not uncommon for people who have had substance abuse issues to keep themselves sober through the practice of a martial art. Is that your experience?
Yeah, so we have all kinds of people from all walks of life, all professions. It's an interesting, eclectic group of folks when you go into a jiu-jitsu gym, and even across gyms. When we go visit other gyms, you see all kinds of people. There are definitely people that use jiu-jitsu as another tool for them to help fight against addiction or to stay sober. It's another way, I think, for them to create a reliable schedule for themselves, and all the things that we talked about before. I think they use it as a way to continue to be happy, or to pursue that happiness, like you would put it. But yeah, we see people from all walks of life, and it's a great way to divert some of your energy into a positive way, in my opinion.
Yeah, all the benefits that we just discussed are sorely lacking in someone who's abusing substances. So that if you can get over your sense of powerlessness, you can increase your self-esteem, get yourself in physical shape, and then, as you say, form a regimen. All of that takes up the space that was being wasted by using drugs or alcohol. So let's get to this issue now of aggression. Because in everything I read over the weekend about martial arts and jiu-jitsu, they make the point that your aggression level will come down. But as you know, the popular culture pays lip service to that in the martial arts. But at some point, they demonstrate how lethal it can be in a combat situation. How do we square those two things? That aggression goes down, but you've got this activity that can be very aggressive.
Yeah, I think there's a few things that go into play. We talk a lot about how if you come into jiu-jitsu with a big ego, that's going to be humbled. But then also, jiu-jitsu was built for a smaller framed person to defend themselves. That was the whole basis of the sport. So they talk about if you have a kid and you don't want them to be bullied, teach them jiu-jitsu. And if you have a kid and you don't want them to be a bully, teach them jiu-jitsu, because you start to learn the impacts of physically what you're doing to other people. But you also learn that a fight is the last thing that you want to be involved in. No matter how much you know about fighting, you don't know the things you don't know. You don't know how many people could get involved in an altercation. You don't know what kind of weapon platforms could be presented in an altercation. The last thing you want to do is find yourself in a fight out in the wild. So that, I think, as you learn how much there is to learn about fighting, but then you also learn about all the variables that could come into play that there's no way you could predict or control. The last thing that you want to do is be in an altercation. So you don't want to provoke any, and you don't want to be in any. If you can get out, you do so. You get out.
I love that. I love that idea that if you're worried that your kid may be have bullying tendencies, teach them this martial art. And if you're worried about them being bullied, teach them this martial art. That's a terrific insight into this thing. Scott, thanks. This is great. I could talk about this for a long time because I know so little about it, but it is fascinating. And it clearly, you clearly have made my suspicion, confirmed my suspicion that this is a good topic for a behavioral health podcast. So you're at purple belt. What are the belts that remain? And are you going for them?
I'm sticking with this. So there's next will be brown and then black belt, and then there are levels to the black belt. Beyond that, I'm sticking with this for life. One of the things I love about it is that I think as a youth athlete, like as an athlete, as at a younger age, but then also in high school and college, one thing that was kind of devastating for me and that I've seen really impact other people is when the sport leaves them. There are times when you play football and eventually you can't play anymore, or baseball. You play baseball to the highest level that you possibly can, and then you can't play anymore. One of the things I love about jiu-jitsu is that there's not necessarily any end in sight of you being able to train or coach or learn more jiu-jitsu or be around jiu-jitsu. It's a very unique sport in that fashion. You can continue to do it up until at 40. I'm not the youngest guy in the room, but I'm definitely not the oldest either.
Is that right? What's the oldest guy in your class?
We've got folks in their 50s, and if you look at the sport in general, they can go on from there. I think famously, I think Ed O'Neill, Al Bundy is a black belt in jiu-jitsu.
Really?
Still training. Yeah, there's plenty of people training well into their later years, which is very cool.
Well, there's nothing more poignant than an aging athlete who has to say goodbye to his sport. It's fascinating that jiu-jitsu doesn't close that door. Of course, that would make Tom Brady a kind of jiu-jitsu football player, because he's obviously never going to quit either. I mean,
incredible. He's beating time so far.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. Just on that note, I mean, it's not so much that there's a lot of work, went into making him that good at 45 years of age. Anyway, Scott, this has been great. Scott Terrizzi. Again, where do you train again one more time?
We're in Wilmington, Delaware at 302 Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. We're actually an affiliate of Balance Studios, excuse me, up in Philadelphia.
Right.
They have some affiliates around as well.
Well, we'll get back to you what's the next belt you'll get?
Brown.
And when will, have any idea when that'll happen?
We don't know. We just have to accumulate the skills, and we have to put in the mat time until our instructors feel that we're ready for the next level.
Well, I think brown's a better color for you than purple. So good luck there. And thanks for joining us on the Behavioral Corner. We really appreciated this.
Steve, thanks a lot. Thanks for having me. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk about jiu-jitsu, and also just to reflect on my own journey. It gave me a good opportunity to sit down and think about why I do it and where it came into play and why I started as well. So thank you.
Yeah, no, you were a great spokesman for this thing. Great topic. Thanks so much. Hey, thank you guys as well. I'll see you next time on the corner. Don't forget to follow us on all those places where you can follow us, and get this podcast wherever finer podcasts are had. Catch you next time on the Behavioral Corner. Take care.
Retreat Behavioral Health has proudly been serving the community for over 10 years. Here at Retreat, we believe in the power of connection and quality care. We offer comprehensive, holistic, and compassionate treatment from industry-leading experts. Call 855-802-6600 or visit us at www.retreatbehavioralhealth.com to begin your journey today.
That's it for now. And make us a habit, hanging out at the Behavioral Corner. And when we're not hanging, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter on the Behavioral Corner.